Hello and welcome to all my DIY mechanics. In this video I will show you how to change the throttle valve on a Renault Trafic identical to the Opel Vivaro and the Nissan Primastar after the error code P2101 has appeared in the fault memory. Attention, this video is only meant to assist you and is not an instruction. I am not liable for any damage to the vehicle nor for any injuries. In these vehicles, the throttle valve is located in the left-hand part of the engine compartment. The throttle valve is located down here. To get to it, you first have to remove this air intake hose and this oil supply hose to allow access. The air hose that comes from the radiator and leads to the throttle valve is relatively easy to remove. Just loosen the clamps on both ends and pull it off. The lower one at the throttle valve is not easy to reach, but with an extension screwdriver it is also possible. Before you remove the air hose now, I first remove the upper clamp from the oil filler neck, because then you can pull the hose downwards and it won't get in your way anymore. I have stuck a piece of duct tape on the top of this hose simply to prevent dirt from falling in. I also put a piece of duct tape around the clamp that I removed so that it doesn't slide down the hose and disappears into the depths of the engine compartment. Once you have loosened the clamps at the bottom and the top, you can remove the hose. Don't be surprised if the inside is a little oily. This comes from the turbocharger and is, as long as it stays within limits, completely normal, especially for older vehicles. There is still a hose attached that you can't remove, so I simply pushed the air hose back a little so that it wouldn't get in my way when removing and installing the throttle valve. Down here you can see the throttle valve. I put some paper towel in it so that no dirts get in there either, although I could have skipped that because I'm removing it anyway. I can now see 2 screws on the top and 2 screws on the bottom, which all need to be loosened. It's quite a difficult job. They are hard to reach, but with enough patience you can do it. When working with the ratchet, you have to be careful not to damage the radiator, which can be seen here on the right hand side of the screen, with all those fine cooling fins. That would be inconvenient. Once you have loosened all 4 screws, the throttle valve is already slightly loose but cannot yet be removed, because it is still connected to the vehicle with a bracket. The screws on the bracket are offset by 90 degrees to the direction we just screwed. My problem was that the head was rounded or could not be unscrewed and therefore was rounded. This meant that I had no way of removing the bracket and had to saw a piece of it off, which of course is the most radical solution, but I don't think the bracket is essential either. If the screws loosen or are not broken, however, don't use a saw of course, but rather loosen the screws. Once all the screws and the holder have been loosened, the throttle valve can be removed by wiggling it back and forth a little. Now that I have arrived at my tidy workbench, I take a closer look at the throttle valve. It's surprisingly clean. In many other vehicles the throttle valve is heavily clogged. Here, however, the exhaust gases are only recirculated behind the throttle valve, which is why it is so clean. So this is not the cause of the fault. I would therefore like to take a look inside and therefore remove the metal clips to take off the cover. This reveals various gears that operate the flap. I looked at them carefully, no tooth was missing, nothing was broken off or anything else, so there was no apparent fault there either. When reassembling, you have to make sure that the seal on the side fits well into the cover again. You may need to help with a screwdriver. To reattach the metal clips, I use the hammer. The best way to do this is to hook the side of the plastic, then tap it so that it slides over the metal of the flap, and the clips are reattached. Now that I haven't noticed any obvious damage to the throttle valve, I simply reinstall it. It is important to note that there's a metal seal between the two parts to be screwed together. I reuse this seal because I don't have a new one. If you have bought a new throttle valve, there should also be a new seal, and you should of course replace it. In both cases you have to make sure that the contact surfaces are level to ensure 100% tightness. You also have to be careful when installing the throttle valve so that the seal is not damaged or slips out of place. This is a bit of a fiddly job, but with patience, as earlier when removing, you can manage it. You can then reattach the bracket, if you have removed it, and fasten the 4 screws on the throttle valve. Now the oil filler hose can be reattached to the oil filler neck by removing the duct tape, pressing the clamp together, again with pliers, and putting the whole thing over it. Once you have reattached the oil filler hose, don't forget to reconnect the plug to the throttle valve. Simply plug it in. Then reconnect the air hose on both sides and secure it with the clamps. When I have reassembled everything, I go through the whole process again in my head. What have I removed and have I really plugged everything back in? I look at each connection, each plug with the lamp, and check the whole engine compartment again to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. And when I have done this once or even twice in the case of important parts, then I am sure that I have not forgotten anything and can start the engine. If you install a new throttle valve, it has to be programmed first. But even if you reinstall the old part, that may be necessary. You can hardly do that yourself because the software and hardware is rather expensive, but you can go to the nearest workshop where it doesn't cost much because it can be done quickly. Now let's start the engine. So, the engine is running, which means I've put everything back together correctly. Unfortunately, I don't know exactly what was or is wrong with the throttle valve. Nothing was visible, no dirt as I said, that could be the reason why it no longer works properly. Nothing was seen on the gears, which could of course also be the cause if teeth have broken off. Using my OBD tester and the associated app, I can monitor the position of the throttle valve and thus observe when and how it regulates. At first glance, everything looks pretty good, so it's also possible that the fault has occurred sporadically and the part isn't even broken. So yeah, we'll see what the future brings for this throttle valve. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it helpful. If you have any further questions or suggestions, please write them in the comments. Maybe I or maybe other viewers can help you with your problem. I would also appreciate a thumbs up. And while you're here, why don't you leave a subscription? And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.